Today, I have the great pleasure of speaking with Anca Platon Trifan. A fascinating conversation you're going to hear because we're going to talk about not only our industry, not only about AV production events, but we're also going to talk about bodybuilding. She's absolutely amazing, a very driven person, and she knows what discipline and excellence mean. Enjoy the conversation with Anca Platon Trifan. Hello, and welcome to a new episode of the Business of Meaning podcast. And today I have the great pleasure to speak with someone who has a lot of different side of personality. She's an entrepreneur. She's a bodybuilder, not a CrossFit person. She's going to explain that. She's a rock star in AV. She's a rock star in AI. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Anca Platon Trifan. Anca, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much, Eric. The pleasure is all mine. And I'm super excited for this conversation, talking about bodybuilding, not CrossFit. Yes.
Let's start with that, especially with somebody like me who might like a little bit of martial art or sports and everything. But the CrossFit thing, I had so many friends who got injured. But what is the difference between CrossFit, bodybuilding, and why did you tell me before we start recording? No, those are two completely different culture.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, Eric, let's just say if you wanted to get injured, jumping off a bridge would be, one way to do it. Like you.
Yeah, right.
So I think, when you get into a sport, you're not going into that sport to get injured, right? However, there is the chance of that might happening, especially for people that don't do stretching, don't do warm up. And for anything that is physically intense. And we can say that bodybuilding and CrossFit is physically intense. If you don't warm up properly, you could tear a muscle, you could tear a tendon. It happened to me during my training. But again, this is the context where I am training daily, 6 days a week. And I have a goal in mind. There's a purpose for this. And even then, you can still have injuries happening. What's really exciting to me in our conversation today is to really draw a lot of parallels between the journey of, bodybuilding or being a CrossFitter. And I have friends that are very strong on CrossFit. I have tried that. Actually, I have done a few years of that. And I think I enjoyed it. The community part, I think I enjoyed that the most. I had accountability partners, and that was fun. It was just not my kind of workout that I would wake up and say, yeah, I'm going to go and,
Right.
nail another workout. Because I feel like CrossFit, what's different about CrossFit and bodybuilding, it has a lot of cardio, a lot of heat, high intensity moments in it. And that's never been my cup of tea. My husband is a marathoner. He runs and
Wow.
he runs and he never stops. And he has no problem with running 5 mile per hour for miles. And that's just not me. And I would train sometimes with him, especially during, my own training. But it would never be something that I look forward to. So for me, bodybuilding, it gives me the ability to take my workout at my own pace. And because you do lift heavy, and the purpose of building muscle is to lift heavy and to train progressively towards, a new PR, you rest more. You don't always take your heart on a constant heat workout. However, I will tell you, when I lift heavy, my workouts and my heart rate is into the 160s, 170s,
Right.
like I would be running a marathon,
Yeah.
It's not the same type of energy output that I have to put or sustain for a long period of time. And that's why to me is attractive, because I can work out for an hour and a half and get a really good workout without feeling like I'm wasted after that. And I can go on with my day and do all the things without, being like, now I gotta rest the rest of the day because I'm so tired.
Okay, now I understand it. Have you got a coach, or you do that? You had some advice and do it on your own. What is your ideal routine for that?
So it's very important, I feel like, if you're just starting into anything that's competitive, into anything that you have a goal to compete in, to have a specialist, to have a coach, to have a mentor that's gonna guide you. In the beginning, that's what I had. When I first embarked on this new journey, And I decided that I'm going to compete. I'm not just going to go to the gym to go to the gym. I actually want to see how far I can go. And I had a coach that was building all my programming, fitness programming, also all my nutrition, like macros, and how that was going to be a year-long program. Because especially in bodybuilding, if you're competing, you go through seasons. And one of them is you're bulking, as in you're building muscle towards being able to get to a cut season. And the cut season is not like you're cutting. You're basically losing the fat that inevitably is going to be built with your muscle gain. So when you get into a cut season, then you're getting closer to your competition. And then you have pre-show prep. And that's another season that is very specific into, especially nutrition. That's when that really, really matters. And what your macros are, your numbers, and everything is basically tracked. Like you track your water intake, your sodium, obviously your sleep and your workouts and your weight, all the things. So based on that is when, as you get closer to the competition day, and then you have the peak week, you manipulate those numbers to get in the best shape for that one day, which is your stage day. But again, everybody sees sometimes, I feel like just that one stage day, right? Like you see the winning look, and then you go back into your season and they expect you to look the same for the rest of the year. That's not maintainable. That's not sustainable. That's something that you are not expected to be in at the same weight and the same weight, because that's a pull. That's a hard pull to get there. So you go back into the season knowing what your goal is. So for example, for me, I had my competition in November, and I was already thinking I want to do another competition sometimes in the spring. And I had the date March 16, which unfortunately I missed, because as everybody has been kind of feeling this sickness that's been going around, I came back after South by Southwest and it hit me so hard, this head cold, that I haven't had such a bad head cold, I don't know, like in years. And my head was like just crazy hurting, a lot of things going on. And also I was with fever for a few days. I was in bed with chills. And I'm like, there's no way I'm going to compete in this shape. And this was like literally on a Wednesday. My competition was going to be on a Saturday. And obviously I had to like pull back. And now that I missed that, the season is not like, oh yeah, I'm going to do another competition soon. It's not like that. Right now I'm actually going back into a reverse, which gets me into a bulk. I'll ride the summer and the fall. And then my next competition was like, it's going to be November again. But it's very disheartening, because you trained for like 6 months straight. And you're like, you put everything into that to feel that, not coming to be. And this is where I can, draw some parallels into business. Sometimes you're working so hard for one lead, for one deal. And then the day comes and you don't close it. And you got to pull yourself back together. Like I allowed myself to feel all the feels that day. And I was so close, like my first competition, I was so close to being first place, and I took second place. It was still great, right? By all standards, for a rookie to take second place was great. And I was in the back crying, being so frustrated with myself, because I was so close and I didn't do it, right? I didn't get it. It's like it was on me. Like I didn't deliver what I knew I was capable of. And obviously there's all the outside circumstances that play into that. But yeah, it's a mind game. It's not just physical, it's mental, it's emotional. And I feel like for me, the biggest takeaway out of all of this is how much it has strengthened me mentally. That's why I call it mental and physical fitness, because it's not just the physical, it's the mental, it's the emotional even. And without having all those pillars part of your well-being, you can't just rely on being shredded and looking great if you're emotionally like a nutcase.
I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, if only she was a little bit more competitive and a little bit more passionate, right? I'm kidding, of course. But I was drawing parallel myself.
You definitely would have taken first place, right?
Especially the first time. But I was drawing the parallel with the business, listening to you for two major points. And everybody I'm trying to help with their business is always two things. The first one is the consistency. And so that's what you need. That's the scorecard. That's
Yep.
keeping track of what's going to lead you to winning at the end of the day. But the second thing, which is kind of amazing to me,
Mm-hmm.
is the balance that you have. Because one thing that is very challenging when you own a business, and especially when you own a business in the meetings and event industry,
Mm-hmm.
is to keep your wellness and to keep training. Now, you telling me that you are training 6 days out of 7, you have an AV production company, you have an event company. How do you do that?
I am highly, highly organized, and I attribute that to the success of being able to do things that otherwise you technically would not have time in the day. And when we were talking during our conversation earlier about, being able to accomplish something requires of you to make some sacrifices. Some of those sacrifices for me is to say no to a night out, a late night out, to say no to drinking during my prep, to say no to late night movies and Netflix and chill just for the
Mhm.
sake of like chilling, to just say no to a lot of things that don't help me during my pursuit of this one goal. And I go to events all the time, and it's a challenge. It's not easy to be, abundantly blessed with all this spread of food and free drinks. It was so funny because for example, at South by Southwest, I was there for a week, and it was easier to get drinks, like alcoholic drinks, than it was to get water. That's true. That is the reality of our events, right? I mean, how many events have you gone to? And the free bar, the hosted bar is there. You have more alcohol than you need. And sometimes you're like, but where is the water? I just need some water. So being disciplined enough to be able to say no, but also sticking to your schedule. I block a lot of the workouts that I do. Like I look, a week in advance if I'm traveling. Like I am actually going to be at Connect tomorrow. And I
Mhm.
already mapped my days with all my appointments, all my schedules, and all the, fun events that are happening after hours. But also my mornings are blocked for my workouts. So another thing that I do, I plan in advance, knowing that I'm going to be at this hotel. I look it up and I say, okay, so what options do I have for working out at this one hotel? What equipment do they have? And then I will build my own program. Now, again, as to your question, if I had a coach, yes, I had a coach the first a year and a half as I was competing. And then after that, I got to the point where I know what my body is capable of doing. I know what I'm going to, what my goal is. And I'm actually building my own fitness programming. And only when I'm like a month close to a competition, I would have a master coach that guides me through the nutrition part, because that's really, really, that's science. That's really
Mm.
hard. And I don't have as much knowledge in the nutrition. I haven't been raised on that to grasp all the implications of how certain things impact my own body even. So having that guidance really helps me to dial in all my numbers as I get close to that date. But programming right now, I know specifically this is what I'm working towards. This is what the goal is, what I expect this one package, which I call my body, that's going to look, this way when I put it on stage. This is what I'm working towards. So that's the muscles groups I'm going to focus on, right? So that's why, like, even when you're traveling, if you have a plan, if you have a strategy, as in business, then you can stick to it. Then you're successful because you mapped out what are the steps that will
Mhm.
get you there. If you just go into it kind of like, well, let's hope for the best.
You're
In
right.
my experience, that
Mhm.
normally doesn't take you far. The hope for the best is going to be like you're sleeping in the next day because you stay too late, because you didn't think, that if you're going to stay too late, it's not going to affect your next day morning routine, which is, getting a workout in instead of, drinking late at night.
Yeah, absolutely. So time blocking, absolutely very important for anything. If you want to, I always tell people, I say, you telling me your life, these are your priorities. Great, show me your calendar and see if
And
it's
then you
reflected.
know.
Yeah, exactly. But even there, being an entrepreneur, owning a business is very alone. It's hard,
Hmm.
and when you overwhelm me, you're alone. When you decided to train and you have maybe something that is happening, or you don't have you're not in the mood, or you tired, or you jet lag, or you lost a business, or it was a stress project, how do you motivate yourself? Because that's really when successful
Mhm.
people differentiate with others. How do you motivate yourself to say, you know what? Yeah, it's blocking my calendar. I don't feel like doing it, and I'm going to do it.
That's where I rely on the habits that I have created for myself. That's where I know that my feelings are not to be trusted in the moment because I might feel like I don't want to do it. It feels hard. I'm not in the mood, like you said. Have had a really hard day, but I know if I can go past that and get into the gym in 15 minutes, that mindset will automatically shift to being grateful that I
Mhm,
did get into the gym, that I am working out because your dopamine levels increase. Everything that was, pulling you down, it changes your mindset, it changes your mood, it changes your like how you feel about yourself. And then even if you had a really hard day and like, you felt like a failure before you got there, when you can accomplish something hard, like I do these squats that are double my, body weight, or leg presses, I'm PRing at 550 on leg press. And when I do something that's really, really hard, I feel so much better that I can accomplish something. But then if I can accomplish that one hard thing, like that takes me into my situation just the hour before, and
mhm,
I gain a new perspective. Okay, that was hard. That didn't work out. Might have failed at that attempt, but guess what? I know I can do it. I can push this weight off the ground. That is a piece of cake right now.
mhm, mhm,
Everything else is a piece of cake, right? So it builds your mental strength, your mental resilience, and your confidence that in your own ability to do things even when everything else feels like falling apart. And for me, actually, the reason why I got into bodybuilding, it was because I was going through a very, very hard season. I was grieving really hard. I lost someone, and it was just mentally, and emotionally, I didn't know how I can fix myself. And I'm a fixer, like I'm a doer. I gotta fix it. Like if there's a solution, if there's a way to fix this situation, I'll fix it. So I didn't know how to do that. And the only way I knew that I could help it was to go work out and work through my mental, fogginess as I was experiencing that season of grief. And lo and behold, as I was building on my mental resilience, I was also building on my body strength, and I was building on my confidence, and I was building on so many other things. To this day, right now, when I have something that I need to work on in my mind, like a problem in the business, a problem with someone or something, I go into the gym, I get a workout in, and I promise you, my mind will come up with a solution because my mind is free to roam now. And as my body's working through the motions, my mind is working on the solution that otherwise, I wouldn't have the white space to allow it to come up with something creative. Another thing that's very important to me is all the content and creativity that comes out of me is because I allow myself to be working out, doing the motions, the hard work, because my mind is free now to come up
mhm,
with new ideas, with thought leadership, with things that are worthy of putting into the world. So, and one sign of burnout for me in business is when I'm not able to do that anymore. When I have no more creative thought coming out of this one person, that's when I know I'm in danger. Like I'm
mhm,
reaching burnout and we need to take some steps to balance some things out. Talking about balance, right? Like balance is hard. I don't feel like we reach balance, especially if you are a parent, if you're running a business, if you're doing anything else on the side. I think there's what I think you mentioned earlier, and one context where you said integration is all about how do you integrate everything that you do, your life, your business, your hobbies, and how do you make that work for you? Because that recipe is different for me as it is for you.
awesome. I love every point you mentioned. One question I have with all the things you're doing, and you do have a podcast as well, and you have businesses. What is the mindset that you have when it comes to delegation? Because when
Mm.
you're a doer, an achiever, an entrepreneur, it's very hard to delegate the first time. So, and in the meantime, if you want to grow a business, there's no other way. You need to
Yeah.
be able to do that. So, what was the click in your business life, they say, you know what? Yeah, it's maybe not 100% the way I would do it, but it's good enough for my brand, it's good enough for my company, it's good enough for the customer. Let's go with it.
I knew you're going to hit me hard with one of those questions of yours. I love that. It has not been easy. I think it's a challenge, especially for people like us, type A personalities that have a little bit of control issue here and there. That's where you strive for excellence. That's another thing. And I didn't say perfection because I feel like anything that you're trying to do perfect, that's an attainable goal. But excellence, I can strive for that. So one thing about my agency, right? It's a production agency, which means I have to heavily rely on partners. When I go on an event site and, after I have had all these conversations with the client and the strategy about what the event is going to be like, when I go on site, I bring with me a team of partners that will take on the responsibility of different things. And in AV production, that could be multiple partners because just in the world of hybrid, when we went from in person to virtual, then from virtual to hybrid, now we're back to in person with a streak of hybrid and virtual, I had to rely on my partners because I couldn't do it all. You cannot be on an event site and fill like 20 positions all at once. If you think you can do that, and I've seen people want to do that, and the output of that was always something falls through the cracks. I'm sorry, as skilled as you are not Superman. You cannot do everything at once. So then you have to decide, okay, what position I could be filling the sound engineer position. I could be the video engineer. I could be the director. I could be the show caller. I could be the lighting designer. I could do all those things because I actually have done multiple of those roles in my career. But what is the best role I can put myself in to serve the client in this one particular event, for this one particular event? And that's when I make my decision. Okay, for me right now is to take a step back, trust my team to fill those roles. And yes, I will support that. And sometimes, I'm nosy enough to go in and say, you know what? You need to EQ that room better because it doesn't sound right. Or how about we change this in the look of, the screens, or how about we change the lighting this way? I have input and I'm opinionated enough to not be afraid to just go and say it. But at the end of the day, I have to step back and trust that they're there because I chose them to be there, because they're experts, because they're skilled, and because they can do the job. And I don't have to do it because I wouldn't be able to do it all. And that's where I think trust comes into play. That's where communication comes into play. That's where like having rehearsals, especially technical rehearsals, comes into play. And empowering your team to do the best job that they're capable of doing with the information that they have and the preparation that you put into that. And it's hard, right? Like sometimes you want to do it better. You think you can do it better. I've been in a situation where I knew 100% that I can do it better, but here I locked myself into being, next to the client and position myself to be in a different role. I have to be okay with what they're delivering, and then we can make changes after that. But in the moment, I have to be okay with it because I made that call, right? So even in the business operations, I feel like it's even harder, like in the business operations, to have to delegate. And for me, the hardest thing was to delegate the production of my own podcast, to have someone to take the edit. And I am an OCD editor. To take the edit off my hands, because at that point, I was spending too much time on things that would not drive my business, would not give an actual ROI, technically. And the product that I was putting out was great. But the difference between like being this great and your minimum viable product that you can put out and still have a good audience base, it was like nobody could tell that difference, only I, right?
Right.
So then I had to step back and say, why am I spending hours? And I would be spending, I kid you not, like 4 to 8 hours editing one podcast episode. Now, luckily, since I started, this was 5 years ago, now we have so many AI tools that can also pick up some of that lift. And now with literally one button, you can remove all the filler words, which before I would literally stay hours upon hours and just cut, right? And taking that job off my hands and say, okay, my editor is capable. I trust him. He can do that work. I don't have to put time into it. That has been so freeing, but also it was a shift in mindset. You know what I mean? And even if I have to go back and say, hey, let's redo this, let's re-render that, or let's change this, it's communication, right? Working with them. And now they also know what I'm expecting, what my expectation level is, and they can deliver on that. Now, I also had, situations where I really wanted to trust, say, I had several assistants, and I really, really wanted to trust them with the work that I entrusted them with. And even after training and mentoring and processes, and here's how we do things, and this is how we should do things, it didn't work out. And that's when you pull back and it's like,
Yep.
I really, really tried to give you a chance. I really, really wanted you to be part of this and be part of the team. And it's just not working out. And unfortunately, you have to be able to say, this is where we split. This is where we have to look at other options, or maybe put you in a different role. Maybe you're not feeding the right seat. Maybe that's where the problem is. Maybe your skill set is for something else. Let's talk about that, right?
And skill set, absolutely talk about that means that 9 times out of 10, they're actually more happy. They're happier doing something else than they were. And just coming back to, the question of delegation, and I didn't want to hit on you specifically, because I can tell you every person that I'm helping, every business owners I'm helping is there or has been there, starting with me. I was the first one. Nobody could do it better than I do. And then I finished the project. Oh, shoot, I need to find a new business. Oh, great, I have a new business. And it was like an hamster wheel until I changed my mindset. And until I said, you know what? I want to grow this business. Yes, there's things I can do or I like doing. And I want to build a team. And that's when my business really started taking off. You mentioned something about AI, and I cannot not talk to you about that, especially that you like speaking about it. You're very well versed with AI. And so I'd like to finish this conversation talking about AI. What are your recommendations? What are the tools you're using, and how could people basically leverage the AI technology to be more efficient, to focus more on what they do best, and to maybe open doors that were not available for them before that?
Well, Eric, let me tell you, I have an entire workshop and bootcamp on that. For the beginner that is probably not yet ready to dive into all the AI tools. And let me tell you, they come out like mushrooms after the rain. I don't know if you heard of that saying, coming from Belgium, but it's a very known saying in Romanian. It's like when everything just sprouts out of nowhere, that's what it looks like. That's what the landscape looks like when it comes to AI. Now, it's funny because I come at AI from AV, but I come at it from a technical background that I've had since I graduated computer science in college. And I've always loved to stay at the forefront of what AI, of the technological changes that were happening. Now, AI, is a big word since just a few years ago, but especially Gen AI, especially with ChatGPT coming out November of 2022. So it's really taken us by storm. Oh my gosh, all this AI tools. But really, if you think about companies like Amazon, when did Amazon come out? Do you remember the year they started their online shopping?
No,
I feel like it was 19, it's been 10, 15 years, right? Well, AI was actually the first company that has implemented AI algorithms from the very first day of operations. And it was very actually interesting to know that fact, because you would think that AI is new. It's not. It's been used by tech giants in the way we perceive content and the way we engage with content. Think of your Facebook feed, think of the Spotify playlist that you listen to, think of Netflix that feeds you specific shows based on the, on your history, watching history. All of that has been around for a while. So it's not new. Now, to the everyday Joe, it might be something new. So what I try to guide some of the clients that I work with, or even when I, put on those workshops, I try to guide people to pick one or two or maybe three tools that can do the job for what their process is, what their workflow is, to save them time in the day. Now, if I asked you, hey, Eric, if you had 10 hours a work week, what would you do with that 10 hours? Would you work more? Would you spend it with your family? Would you maybe go into the gym and work out once, like, what would you do with that time? Like, would you not want to leverage that time for your own benefit? And would you not say yes to a tool that helps you leverage that time, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So that's where it comes down to. If you had the ability, even though there's a bit of a learning curve, like with anything that has technology embedded into it, think of the iPhone, think when we switched from calculators to phones and everybody was like freaking out, oh my gosh, how do we, now you have everything. Your computer is literally this little tiny tablet that you hold in your hands every single day. Everything is got a bit of a learning curve. But if you can give yourself the grace to try and fail and then try again and give it a chance, I promise you, your processes, your workflow, your productivity, how efficient you deliver content or business ideas, it will thank you in the long term. And that's where I come at. I am the one person that I look at a process and I want to see if there's another way to do it, if there's a more efficient way to do it. And if there is, I will try to implement those steps or whatever tools that they are. And, practically speaking, let's just say how many hours you're on a Zoom meeting. And I have an AI tool, it's called Read AI, that is in the background, takes all my notes, and then it gives me a meeting notes that now I can go back to and reference. And I would have conversations and I don't remember exactly what was taught. And now I don't have to, because everything, and not just the meeting notes, but now you have takeaways. Now you have what's the next step, actionable split. And then also even takes you to the point where, like, in that conversation with that one client, potential lead, how well were you perceived? There is algorithms that now read your voice, a tone, read your conversation style, read your face, and it reads the other person as well. And it gives you a score based on that. So you know how hot or cold of a lead that is just from that data. This is data that you didn't have access to before. Yeah. How would you not say yes to that?
No, that's crazy.
That's a simple example, because obviously there's so many. I love to use playbooks, integrations, anything that saves me time, especially like even for the podcast. The script has been my best friend, because again, I would take this one video of our conversation, run it to the script. It automatically removes all the filler words. It puts captions, and it gives me YouTube descriptions. It gives me social descriptions. It gives me snippets and clips that I can post on social. And then I take it from there into Repurpose IO, which automatically does it for me, that I don't even have to do it. So it's just like you create this workflow now that really saves you that time. So when I say, yes, I do work out an hour and a half a day, and you're like scratching your head, how do you have time to do that? That's because I use AI to support me in my productivity, so I can allocate that block of time to my fitness, to my well-being, to whatever other things I feel like I want to get into, who knows, next season.
Have you seen a major difference in the way you operate and in the way you sell because of AI? And what would be 2 or 3 tools you would like to recommend?
Absolutely. So lead generation is one of the processes that AI can really target your client, your customer persona. And if you are in the business of like B2B business, or if you're like, have a service type of business like I am, I want to make sure that my content, everything that I post on LinkedIn, for example, is for the purpose of lead generation. And every lead I get is from LinkedIn based on the content that I create, because it's very purposeful, is focused, is created within the framework that I work. And I actually had to come up with this new framework, which I call it Fit for Events, which has 4 different pillars, 4 very important pillars to me, because one is AV productions. I operate in that field. AI technology, I teach in that field. I lead workshops. I speak in that. And then we have the thriving audiences. That's where all the events that we create, the agendas, the run of shows, the experiences is for that audience to be thriving. And then my last pillar is empowered behind the scenes teams, because I work with a lot of behind the scenes teams, and it's important. It's the communities that I foster, women behind the scenes in event productions, is the relationships that I build, and all of that has to be built within that framework. And the reason why I needed that framework is because I knew in my mind who my customer base is, who am I serving, who am I creating content for. But then I also had to put myself into my client's shoes and realize that from an outside perspective, it could also look like I'm all over the place. If you look like I'm an event professional that does AV productions, that's also a planner, that's a bodybuilder, and also has a side of the company that puts on wellness retreats. Like, okay, woman, like, can you, and also speaks. Oh, I forgot to say, I also speak at events a lot. What are you actually doing? Not to talk about the podcast and all the other things, right? So I need to create a framework. So with that being said, how does AI help you lead generate? It will look at your client persona, at your customer persona, and now you can craft messaging, you can craft content, and you can create processes to follow up with that one client base. Bardeen is actually something that I'm going to cover in one of my free AI LinkedIn streams that every Wednesday I will go live, and I literally just showcase one tool, one or two tools if we have time, because it's really 30 minutes. And my next one is going to be Bardeen. I love Bardeen. It's kind of like Zapier, but it's a more intricate in the way it works with automations, integrations, and playbooks. So one simple example, say a post on LinkedIn. I have a bunch of comments from a lot of people, and the automation that I created in Bardeen will go on that post, take everybody's comments, and take those leads, move them to a spreadsheet with their name, with their company information, with their email, everything that I need. The next step of that could be craft an email from that into ChatGPT. The next step could be that goes into my draft, ready to be sent, after obviously I give it a bit of like reading to make sure that it sounds right and it's not, off the wall, like sounds like a robot. But all of that goes into saying you can create so many different playbooks for yourself based on what your end goal is. And that's where I feel like there's so much creativity to be had, even in the context of technology, because you don't do one thing the one way. You can do it many different ways. And the only limit is your creativity, your imagination, right? So that's one simple example. And again, even if you don't do any of that, and all you have is ChatGPT, you can still use that tool to craft a very custom message for your client based on their content, based on their information, based on what they're passionate about, based on what they like, so that you can relate to their either problem, how you can solve it, or relate to their, sharing of how they, do things, or how they're interacting with the other people or the other connections, if this is LinkedIn. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I feel like I could talk about this for a while. Reason why, like, I had to find containers in which I can do this in a purposeful manner, because my goal is, when I put on any of those workshops or I have this conversation, is look at your workflow, look at your, project. What is the problem that you're trying to solve with AI? And that's when I can brainstorm and we can come up with a solution with a couple of tools that can support you, because there's so many different tools out there. But again, it has to go back to your processes. And that's something that I say, like, you can throw technology at a lot of problems, but if you don't have a process, what you're going to do is throw money and technology, and you're going to end up with a very expensive processes that don't solve your problem. So first you have to look at your processes. You have to know, what is it that I'm trying to solve? Where can AI up level this work that I'm doing that it's not necessary for me to do?
Absolutely. I love every word you say. Thank you for sharing that. My last question is actually linked. You mentioned about Amazon. I was Googling it.
Yeah.
And I, you know what's going to happen July 5th in this year?
After 4th of July, what is going to happen?
No, July 5th, it's going to be 30 years of Amazon.
Wow.
Amazon was founded on July 5th, 1994.
I knew Washington. It's in the 90s, but I didn't remember. Idea. Oh, it's my amazing. Gosh. So here's, like, I was reading a book on that, because Jeff Bezos, when he went to Seattle, he intentionally went to Seattle to have access to the pool of technology and the creative minds that were there. And that's how he built Amazon.
Absolutely. But my last question is actually linked to something that he said that I love, and I would like to ask you the question. He's always asked, what is new, what is changing, what is coming, and obviously with AI, there's a lot of that.
Right.
Now, one of my favorite answers from Jeff Bezos, he said, I'm asking myself actually, what is not changing in the next 10 years? In the next 10 years, people will still have, they still want to have cheaper product. They still want to have fast delivery. Nobody's going to tell me you are not expensive enough or it's too fast, the delivery.
Right.
So in our world, in our industry, when you see with AI, when you see production and events, what do you think is not going to change in the next 10 years in our industry?
It's a fantastic question. And the way I see things, and this is where, I think there's a bit of peace and grace for anyone that's freaking out that AI is going to take over their jobs or something. What's not going to change is the human connection, the interactions that we have, the in-person interactions that we have. I feel like if anything, one thing that's going to be more important than ever is those in-person events, that we will have the ability to meet with people and not their AI avatars. Because let me tell you, I have already deployed those AI avatars in a lot of my content. My podcast is introduced by my AI avatar, which looks like me, maybe not, doesn't sound like me just yet. It has a bit of an accent, but again, so do I. But like I can literally give it a script, and he goes and he says the whole script, and I don't have to put all this effort into looking like presentable to come on video all the time. And what was interesting was I was interviewing the pioneer of the metaverse, Danny Stefanik, and he's been in this metaverse virtual AI space for, I don't know, 30 something years. And he was telling me that in the last 2 years, not even like 1 year, he's never come on video on LinkedIn at all. Only his AI avatar has, to the point where people that meet him in person, they don't know that it's not him on LinkedIn posting those videos. Only when they meet him in person, they realize that they were interacting with his AI avatar all this time. So that's what I mean. In the next 10 years, in the future, me and you connecting in person, making that human connection, making that, having a conversation, being able to gather, that's going to be more important than ever. Because a lot of what's online, a lot of what's being put out there as content, most likely might not be our version of me in flesh and bone, but some kind of an AI version of that.
Amazing. And in the meantime, you can train for your bodybuilding contest. So
that's right. While my avatars are just speeding on content.
Anca,
hosting podcast, being on podcast. I'm telling you, this is another interesting fact that I was just like, sorry to interrupt you, but like, I was so excited about it. There is all of this, software behind the scenes that is taking notes. It's learning from our interactions. And one CEO, tech CEO giant, was saying by the end of this year, the AI avatars will be able to join meetings, in-person meeting. I mean, not in person, but on virtual meetings, and respond like it would be you in person. It would be trained on your knowledge, on your data set, and you would be able to literally be in multiple meetings at once without actually stepping foot in a Zoom meeting.
Wow.
How crazy is that?
It's totally crazy. I enjoyed very much talking with you today. Great avatar. I hope to meet the real Anca one day.
This is when my hands come into the frame so that everybody knows that it's still me, Anca.
Yeah,
it's funny because when I have my AI avatar introducing some of those podcasts, I instruct her, I give her the script to say, hi, I am Mira, Anca's avatar.
That's brilliant. Anca, thank you so much. What is the name of your podcast and how can people get in touch with you?
Events Demystified, and a sneak peek, my conversation with Eric will come out in April sometime. It's a very awesome, insightful conversation that I look forward to. And for anyone that wants to connect with me, LinkedIn is the best place, just because a lot of the thought leadership that I put out there is LinkedIn, and for fun, for behind the scenes reels, Instagram. But if you look, for Anca Platon Trifan or Trifan events, any of those two will take you to my pages. And the podcast is Events Demystified, and that can be found on its own website, can be found on YouTube, and as well as Instagram and LinkedIn.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for this time.
Anca, thank you very much for spending the time with me. I love everything you share with us today. Absolutely fascinating. And I also love how you are able to do so many different things in your life. Congrats for that. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to get in touch with me, please do so on LinkedIn. Follow me on LinkedIn, Eric Rosenberg with a Z, or go to the website eventbusinessformula.com. And if you learn anything today, please share this episode with your network. Thank you. Bye-bye.